Hi, and welcome to this episode of Connecting Avalara with Enterprise. I'm Sharon from Enterprise, and in this session we will simply look at how to configure and connect your Avalara application with Enterprise and start recording and reconciling all of your tax calculations for the US. So very simply, within Enterprise, in order to connect the Avalara application, you of course have to activate and use your Avalara app. So once this has been done, and this is where you have proceeded within Avalara in the Ava Tax app and configured the app to connect to the API for Enterprise, which if we look here at settings, if we go into settings here, we can go to all Ava Tax settings, or we can simply go first of all to integrations, which is part of your configuration process for Ava Tax. And in here you can see that we have already linked up to the API and custom integration. So you can see there Enterprise is connected. So what this does is it generates a license key. The license key and account details then of course are important information that you will require when doing the connection or finalizing the connection with an Enterprise. In addition to that, within the settings, you also get license and the API keys, which I've mentioned, and you can also manage your companies. So this is where you define what companies then through Enterprise will be linked into your Ava Tax app. So when we go in here to the list of companies, we will see a list of all those separate companies listed, and of course any status to confirm that those are active with the integration. So let's jump right straight back into Enterprise. And if we proceed down here now on the left-hand side to explore add-ons and services, click here, double-click on the Avalara icon. And in here, you will be asked to put in the account ID, the license key, which I've mentioned, coming from the Ava Tax settings, and the company code. So these will all be generated. And of course, in addition to that, you can see that you can define over here in settings the sales tax account, which is the sales tax GL account, and the purchase tax GL account for all your sales and purchase tax transactions, which is your invoices as they come through Enterprise and update directly to your Ava Tax app. These are the GL accounts that will be updated at that time. So please check out the full guide on help.enterprise.com to ensure you understand the implication of filling out these relevant fields. So of course, at any point in time, you can disable the tax calculation and disable any tax recording. However, if you disable the document recording, the tax amount will still flow through to your Ava Tax app. From here also, we have an option to disconnect. And of course, when all the relevant information has been populated, we can click on test here to ensure that the connection is successful. So just to confirm in terms of prerequisites, when you're setting up your company within Enterprise, part of your company, of course, is your organization details. So it's important that you have all the relevant details in here, of course, for your organization to ensure that the tax code, everything is recorded correctly before proceeding with any of your invoicing through the Enterprise organization. But this will all be done with you as part of setup and onboarding. So it's important that that is correct. In addition, then, of course, you have the definitions that are required to ensure that the transactions entered go to the correct tax codes. So first of all, let's take a look at your customers. So when defining your customers, if we just bring up a customer here for the moment, and if we look at our customer setup, one of the important things to note here, if we just go to edit the customer details here, so under finance and taxes, so you can see there where you can define the Avalara entity use. So for example, if, for example, your customer was actually exempt from tax, this is where you can choose the relevant exemption code here to ensure that any transaction that goes through for this particular customer is carried through to the correct tax code and therefore the correct tax calculation. So that is important. In addition to that as well, let's just save those details. Coming back to the same customer information here, the same customer account, the address. So again, within the address setup, it's important that any addresses that have been defined contain the correct information. So as you know, with the US localization for tax purposes, the state, the city, the jurisdiction. It's all very important. So it's important here that any address information given has the correct information, the correct city, country, state and county for the purpose of the tax calculations. So always ensure that that information is correct. And in particular, if you're importing that information through the file importer into Enterprise, you'll be able to check that information, of course, in your data file importer before you bring it into Enterprise. So next in the configuration, of course, is your stock items. So very simply, click into items, click into stock items, select your relevant stock item and click on the taxes tab. So if we just click here on edit. So on the taxes tab, so what you have now for the purpose of the Ava tax integration is you can select your type of item. So from here you can choose whether it's digital, freight, other product, service or unknown. And then of course corresponding with that, then you can choose the relevant tax code. So these are your everyday tax codes that you're used to seeing depending on the type of stock item that you have for the purpose of US tax calculations. So within this list here, for example, against product, so if we click on the list here, you get a list of all the related tax codes. These are your everyday tax codes that you're used to seeing within the US tax localization. So all the various codes you can see there against clothing, outdoor, and there's multiples of those. So everything is available to you. So that's against your stock item. Okay, so now the configuration is complete. Let's take a look at how to assign a tax code to your sales transactions. So let's jump right into the sales module here and click into invoices. So from here we can click on new sales invoice and we can choose from item for stock items or service. So let's just click into a service invoice to start with. Let's choose our customer here. Let's click on add a line. Let's select our service item. So the details will appear and you can see here the default account code for the revenue will also appear here, and then of course the Avalara tax code. So from here I can choose from the relevant list of tax codes that you're familiar with, the relevant one that's applicable to this invoice. So let's just choose our tax code. Let's click on OK, and of course we can add further lines and then we can click on save. We can choose of course to email that to the contact for the customer. And now the invoice has been added. So let's take a look at how that applies then to a stock invoice. So back into sales. And again, let's go to invoices. The same will apply for the process if you're using sales orders or sales quotations as your starting document. So let's go to item. And again, let's choose our customer. And very simply, let's go to add a line. And from here, we can simply just choose the quantity against the relevant stock item. And in addition, now we need to click on edit here against the line. And when you edit the line, you will now get an option here for the Avalara tax code. Again, simply click on the drop-down list to select the relevant tax code applicable to this item and click on OK. Again, I can continue to add further lines on. And again, when I'm ready, I can click on save to add that invoice. So now those invoices are added through to Enterprise, and the next step of course then is to look at the transaction feed as it comes through to Avalara. So let's take a look at that. So now let's take a look at Ava Tax to see how those transactions come through. So remember at the very beginning that when we configured Ava Tax to look at your relevant company here in settings. So within settings, all the relevant companies are managed through the manage company details here. So any of your linked companies will appear here. And if I now go into transactions, click on transactions here again. So what I can do here is I can select the date range in order to view transactions. So whether that's previous month, this month to date, this year to date, or 1 year to date. And I can obviously select the relevant document status, exact document code match if I want to look for a specific document, customer code, the country, and of course the region if I want to break it down further. So let's just look at this month to date. And what we can do here is simply click on apply so that we see a list of all of the transactions. So here we are. Here are the invoices that we just added today. And you can see here the relevant document code, the document date, the status. You can see the vendor or the customer code, the region. So now if we click into any of the documents, so what that then will show me exactly the breakdown within that particular document. So this is the service invoice that we posted. You can see here the service amount, and if I want to see the tax details, I can expand the line further and you can see the tax code used, any of the details, the shipping address, etc. So if I look down here for the jurisdiction, and I can see the exact breakdown for this particular service invoice, and the same for any of the invoice. So it truly is that simple. The invoices will flow directly into the Ava Tax for you to make all of your relevant tax returns. So thank you for watching and look forward to seeing you again soon for another training session.